The EU has announced that it will contribute €1.5 billion in aid to Syrian refugees. The EU's foreign policy chief warned that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is having drastic effects on many poverty-stricken Syrians. The war is contributing to the global rise in food prices, worsening the plight of millions of Syrians. Donors are being called upon to dig deep to help this Middle Eastern country, which has been plagued by war for over a decade. And I'm joined now by Filippo Grandi, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Sir, thank you very much for taking out the time to take our questions. Warm welcome to DW News. The war in Syria, as you know, is now in its 12th year. Entire cities have been obliterated. They don't exist anymore. 13 million people forced from their homes. And this news has completely faded from the headlines. How do you go about focusing donors' attention on the plight of millions of displaced Syrians?
Well, you raise a very serious issue. And in a way, I'm speaking to you from Brussels. I'm participating in this important conference. It is good that the European Union has decided this year again to convene the conference and to call the attention of the donors on the need of all these millions of people. You know, it's a complete coincidence, but today the number of Syrian refugees registered in the Middle East is 5.7 million. This happens to be today exactly the same number as the Ukrainian refugees that have left their country, 5.7 million. And in a way, it gives a sense of the magnitude of the challenges that we're facing. Millions of people in different parts of the world, a lot of attention on Ukraine that, of course, detracts from other crises. And there's not just Syria. I'm just back from Africa. There's many crises there and in other parts of the world. Unfortunately, we need my job, the job of people like me in the United Nations, in the aid community, is to keep the world's attention focused on all these crises because all these people that are affected need help and need support.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk in just a moment about the crisis in Ukraine. But I'd like to get your take on some countries have resisted taking in Syrian refugees. Others have gone above and beyond, one of them being, of course, Turkey, which is home to nearly 4 million Syrian refugees. But it's now facing a public backlash. What do you make of those developments that are taking place right now in Turkey?
Well, it is very worrying, but this was a very strong theme in today's conference. The fatigue that countries surrounding Syria are experiencing because they have hosted millions of Syrian refugees for so long. And, you know, some of them, Lebanon, for example, are facing catastrophic challenges of their own. Many Lebanese citizens are now as poor and as impacted by this crisis as the refugees themselves. So inevitably there's fatigue. And how do you counter that fatigue? I would say in two ways. One is by stepping up the support that the international community provides to countries like Turkey, like Lebanon, like Jordan, like Iraq, like Egypt, other countries in the region hosting millions of refugees, and also by trying to find solutions for this long-standing refugee situation.
Now, as you know, the mass flight from Ukraine, it resonates deeply with the Syrians who see their lived experience mirrored in some ways. Do you think Ukraine's European neighbors, rather, are doing a good enough job of looking after people fleeing conflict?
I think they're doing a very good job. The declaration of the temporary protection status for refugees from Ukraine that was decided by the European Union very early on, just after the start of the Russian invasion and the beginning of this big exodus, was really a very positive measure. It allowed people to disperse around Europe, to join families and communities in those countries, to be supported by them. It allows people to have access to services, even to jobs if they want to work. So it was a very forward-looking decision. And yesterday was Europe Day. And I tweeted that I hope that this exemplary response of Europe to this Ukrainian refugee crisis can be, the same solidarity, the same vision can be applied also to response to crises in other parts of the world.
In conclusion, sir, what do you know about the situation of refugees who we understand have been forcibly displaced to Russia and how they're being treated right now?
We have very little access to Ukrainian refugees in Russia. And we had the same very limited access even before the 24th of February, following the 2014 conflict in Donbass, in eastern Ukraine. There was already a number of Ukrainians that went to Russia, but our access is extremely limited. We have heard of reports of forcible displacement, of deportation, but we have asked the Ukrainian government to give us lists and names so that we can raise these issues with the Russian authorities as well.
United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi. Sir, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.